Welcome to another week of Eddie G's Music World. It is today, April 29th, 2019. I'm just going to give you some background on a couple of things happened yesterday. Mainly one thing. Well, I have been reaching out to a few people to try to get them on the show. So I'm not sure that I'll just give you a bit of an insight into a couple of things. There's this one guy. He's kind of like a black guy that he's talking about like he's like a ghetto type of talking like I'm not being racist, but that he sounds like that type, and he's recanting all his experiences listening to hard rock like Time by Pink Floyd, Stairway to Heaven, about two or three others. So he's like acting like how freaky it is for him who's into who doesn't look like he would like that kind of music reacting to hearing it for the first time. So it's weird the way those two things work together. So he found it interesting, and I like his take. Like he's freaking out when he hears, "Wow, those guys know really how to play words, and the guitars. This guy's great. This is the first time I heard it." Anyway, I reached out to him to put him on my show, but he didn't answer back. There's one experience. Second, Andy Kim. I tried to reach him. He's a original Montrealer. He wrote songs in New York for the Brill and the Brill Building. Co-wrote "Sugar Sugar," had a number one hit on his own and about five or six other hits. He didn't get back to me, but one guy did. He's to the standard typical listener. Overall, you won't know who this guy is, but I'll give you some background. And this guy replied to me and said originally he would go on my show. But then he asked me a follow-up question, and then after that, he disappeared. He ghosted me, but he's not really someone who knows me that well, but he was interested at first. His name is Jonathan King. Now, Jonathan King, if you go into YouTube, you can hear he had only one hit in the United States. Everyone's Gone to the Moon. But the reason he was very well known is he discovered Genesis, signed them up to a record contract in England. He managed them at the beginning. This is before Phil Collins was in Genesis. So this is like 66, 67, when Gabriel was 16 or 17 years old. And he did It's Good News Week by Hedge, Hoppers Anonymous, and a bunch of British songs. He also had a hand in getting 10cc together kind of thing. Like I don't know, I didn't read that much into it, but he kind of like either managed them or he got them signed at the record company. He did a funny version of Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones that Mick Jagger actually liked, and he hung with Mick Jagger. He's also had a few brushes with the law. He was accused and maybe had some hanky panky with 16-year-old guys. Anyway, that wasn't the point of me contacting him. I was interested more of his music background. I wasn't going to bring up any of his accusations of things that he may or may not have done. I don't know. I didn't look into that aspect of it. But anyway, his first reaction was listen to this on YouTube. Like he replied to me. And then I said, would you do my show? And he said, yes, absolutely. Where are you? Where do you live? So I told him Canada, this and that. And I know for one thing, I saw him interviewed because there was a documentary on Gary Glitter, who has the song Rock and Roll, who had his own brushes with he was found guilty of being with underage kids. So they interviewed this guy, Jonathan King, because he had his own accusations. And the interview he had for this, the people came to his house in England. So maybe he was looking for a closer type of interview where you're either next, in the same city as a person, you meet them, you talk to them. But when I said Skype, because obviously I can't go to England to do an interview for a show with like 3 listeners, I think that's what got him to forget about it. Or maybe he's going to get back to me, but chances are he's not overly enthusiastic when he realized that it has to be through Skype. Maybe he doesn't want to do it with a microphone attached and calling, and I don't know. I can't get into his mind. If he backed away, he backed away. But I am doing my effort to get him on. I actually came close to interviewing another guy who's speaking of accusations, he's actually on the side of outing churches for pedophilia, and he's been in legal trouble in Montreal where he's picketed some church, and some woman thinks he's stalking her and calls the cops all the time. And this guy's talked to me on the internet. So I got an accused pedophile almost being interviewed, and a guy who hates pedophilia. I didn't ask him, but probably he'd come on my show and do it, even though it's not really music. It's a bit of a variety. So that's the last few things that have been going on. I am waiting for the number one bad dude stickers and the number one bad dude coffee cup. It's been a while. I haven't heard. The company that's shipping me these things is spamming me like 3 times a day, but they haven't sent me my stuff. It's coming from somewhere in the U.S. According to the Grigster, I'm probably the only Canadian fan that he has, listener fan, whatever. So maybe it's more for the American people that wouldn't pay extra shipping and extra duty because of the exchange rate. Because I won't say how much it cost me for a cup and stickers, but more than it would if I walked into if I didn't buy them. Like if I was in the U.S., I would have saved easily $25. But it's okay. Grigster's a good guy. He's tried to help me out. He's helped me out. He's been on the show. He's one of the few people around. Creeper Freak, too, if he's still listening, he's back. People were worried. Where's Creeper Freak? There was widespread panic on the internet. Creeper Freak hadn't done a show. We were scared. I actually went and looked in the obituaries. Sorry, John. I didn't think you were passing on, but everybody was freaking out and passing the stress to me. And no, he was painting his house. So he had to shut down his stuff for a while. And anyway, that's the updates. We still have a little bit more. I'm going to keep trying to get some interviews going. I mean, it's been a little hard, but I'm not. I mean, I've got time, so I'm going to keep giving it a shot. Let's get back to the top 500 albums, which is according to Rolling Stone, and we're at number 40. We're going to go to 20, and that'll be the end of this list. The Love was a band from California, and the album was Forever Changes. This is a band fronted by Arthur Lee, and I remember he was kind of a guy, came out in the same time as the Doors, from the same scene. And at first, it looked like they were going to break through and be a big band like the Doors, but they didn't really catch on in a big commercial way. I remember listening to a couple of their songs just because I was curious, knowing that there was a bit of a phenom about this band, but they never actually, they stuck around for a few years, but they never actually hit the big time, and probably just became an oldies band pretty fast or got cut for the record company. But they had a good psychedelics run for 2-3 years. But obviously these guys, Rolling Stones, feel that they're worthy of being high up on the list. Number 39, The Beatles, Please Please Me. Okay, so I guess there's going to be a lot of these albums towards the top, since we all know that what the story is there. I don't feel like going over the Beatles again. We already know the story. Let's assume there's going to be 3 or 4 more before we get to number 1. Next, let's guess Rolling Stones. Muddy Waters, the anthology. Okay, one of these guys that was known for not being like a mainstream act, bluesy, probably didn't make a lot of bread. Jimi Hendrix changed one of his songs around, I've read, to Voodoo Child. They adapted the song Rolling Stone for Voodoo Child. And Jagger and Richards took the name from that song Rolling Stone. They took it from Muddy Waters. The Eagles, Hotel California. Seems like wow, they're starting to load up on the Overplayed albums. And speaking of Overplayed albums, this is one of the top ones of all time. Not because it's, it deserves to be up there, but it also deserves a break, like not to be listened to all the time. New Kid in Town is on here, Hotel California. I've seen the Eagles twice, and yeah, it was a monumental album, and I was graduating high school that year, and it was all over the radio, and it's still popular today. I see next is Tapestry by Carole King. Singer-songwriter, big time, real building writer, dated Paul Simon, all this stuff. We all know about the fact that James Taylor sang uh, "You've Got a Friend," but of course she wrote it, or maybe there was her Jerry Goffin wrote it with her. I don't remember the exact details of how that came about. But this was a big album. Like, Alanis Morissette is kind of like the laid back girl. Like, a lot of girls liked her. Same thing for Joni Mitchell. Well, Carole King was like that. It was like an album for a girl, mostly, but I kind of liked her songs too. Doesn't really matter if you're a girl or a guy. Number 37. Let's see if I can throw a guess out there. I haven't hit one of these yet. Let's say Led Zeppelin. David Bowie, Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Funny, I was listening to an album, a song from a band David Bowie was in 1965. So this guy, I forget the name of the band, Man something, I don't remember. Um, and he was like really young back then, and they hadn't become a big band, obviously, and he left and did a lot of stuff and became the big star that he is. You know, it's it was definitely out there. I mean, he has a line in Ziggy Stardust called "Well Hung and Snow White Tan," which, well, of course, it's not going to be a hit when you talk about stuff like that. It's a little too edgy. And we know we lost David a few years back. Number 34. I don't know. The band, music from Big Pink. One of their big albums that they had. And, came from the Dylan backup band to doing their own thing. Trying to remember. You see, I have weird, I have thoughts running through my head. It's like, how many members of the band are still alive? I know Robbie Robbins is alive. And then there's the other guys. There's probably one more, right? There's not two or three more. Is this guy Garth Hudson alive? I don't know. And then you have Levon Helm's definitely passed away. And another guy's passed away. I forget his name. He sang Out of the Blue. So I know, if anybody knows, who's the other guy alive from the band. Number 33, let's see if I can guess who it is. Deep Purple. Ramones, wow. Okay, number 33. This is one of the earlier albums, 1976. I don't have to go into the fact that I saw them twice in any great detail. My only regret was not hanging around, which I did later on in life, outside the building to try to talk to them before they left. The second time I saw them, I couldn't really do much hanging around because I just had recovered from sciatic back issues, very, very terrible. I was wearing a brace. It was like horrible pain. And I couldn't really stand very well with ease. And now I have the sciatic pain almost 30 years later, and it's in my lower leg. So these pains come and go. But this was a monumental album, and no original members left. Now, I was guessing Rolling Stones before, and here they are. Let It Bleed. I'm trying to think if there's anything major to talk about this one. It was one of the big albums of the time, 1969. And upcoming lists will be songs that Jimmy Page played session on. That will be fascinating. There was one Rolling Stone song where I think they threw him on, or at least Marianne Faithfull, who hung out with Mick Jagger, was dating Mick Jagger. So that'll be interesting because Jimmy Page, he was really big on session work. Same with John Paul Jones. They didn't have bands like in the mid '60s. Well, they did the Yardbirds for Jimmy Page later on, but the early to mid '60s he was doing session work. Anyway, this album has Midnight Rambler, Monkey Man, You Can't Always Get What You Want. Mick Jagger wrote that on the acoustic guitar. Not just Keith played the guitar. Number 31, get really high. The Byrds, let's see. Bob Dylan, oh, I was so close. Since the Byrds did some Dylan songs. Bringing It All Back Home. Okay, it's a bit of a blur with this Dylan because, like, the guy's knocked out 50 albums, and I can't really give much insight on every album, except to say that I see Subterranean Homesick Blues was on this. Maggie's Farm. It's All Right, Mom. It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. All very big songs for him as far as album rock goes. So the man who keeps touring is that album was really huge for him and definitely one of the best. Should I say 30? Should I say I don't know. Let's not guess. Joni Mitchell. See, I just mentioned her, and here she is. Blue. My sister had this album. She had 4 or 5. Let's see what I said. It's like a girls' album. The girls liked Joni Mitchell. Funny thing, I read about 3 years ago, that she's been very ill with illness, and then because I have had a couple of tweets with what's his name, David Crosby. So my brain is not functioning. David Crosby, of course, is friendly with her. And I asked him how she's doing like 2, 3 years ago, and he said she's recovering. And she also had trouble paying her bills because there was apparently a broken swimming pool that couldn't be fixed because she's ran out of money or lower money. I mean, when you have songs that other people cover over time, which she's had, you'd think you'd be able to survive off that. But when you don't tour for 30 years, or when was the last time she got in and did a tour? The old albums aren't selling, and people probably are not covering a lot of her songs. So, there's probably not more than a few thousand coming in every year for her. I mean, you have property taxes, you live in a big house, you have to have some kind of income, and she's got to be, I mean, I'm going to say 75, 73. So this Fright Tonight was on this album, and of course it was big for Nazareth, but then again, Nazareth's hit was more than 45 years ago, so who's out there covering it or putting it in commercials, or even if she doesn't have it publishing, who knows? Number 29, Led Zeppelin. I figure they're coming up, and I'm starting to guess them, and they're coming up later than I say. First album, Led Zeppelin, the bluesy one, the rock one, the one where they got legal problems with all these artists, these blues artists from the past, and one of their finest, of course. I remember buying the tape and playing the hell out of it in my car. But, this was an interesting collaboration. Of course, Robert Plant was in Band of Joy with John Paul Jones. And the story is Page and John Paul Jones. No, he was in it with Bonham. Robert Plant and Bonham were in Band of Joy. Very good band. You should listen to them. And John Paul Jones and Jimmy Page heard them play live and just grabbed Plant for their new project. Let's see. Next. I don't know. The Byrds? The Who. Should have guessed The Who. Who's next? Where they're all seen after finishing Urination. The story with The Who is Townsend had said in the past that he didn't get out of debt till the early 70s because of the fact that the record company kind of kept notes of all the expenses that The Who cost them for recording albums and touring, and if they didn't bring big money in those days, they owed all this money back to the record company. So it took them a while to get the money that they work hard for, but I guess it paid off since they're still touring with an orchestra. I've seen them live once. Very entertaining. U2 to Joshua Tree. We're going to go right through that one fast because I'm tired of them. Although I did hear on YouTube, I was listening to 6 different versions of Everlasting Love on yesterday, and they kept coming one after the other. It was a Carl Carlton hit, and I saw that U2 did a version of it, and it was pretty good. Okay, 26. Prince, let's guess. Fleetwood Mac, Rumors. Boy, every massive album is on here now. Well, another one that's super overexposed, but we did see them live. Quite a good show, but since then, Lindsey Buckingham is out. He got on the wrong side of Stevie Nicks with some dirty look he gave her. I don't know. And they brought in Mike Campbell from Tom Petty, as well as the guy from Finn, from Crowded House. By the way, Missy Adamson, I think she saw one of my shows. So if you happen to see another show, hi back, and thank you for tuning in. James Brown, live at the Apollo. wow, great talk about how great this album was. Um, he 1963, so uh, I don't know. I'm sure I've heard a bit of it, but I don't know much about the actual performance of it because I've never sat and listened to how he did live. But he was a great live performer, so it's not a shock that he's that high on the list. We're going to go to 20, and after that, it'll be the last bunch, the next show. Eddie G's Music World. Thank you for listening. Stevie Wonder, Inner Visions. Yeah, one of his brilliant albums. For sure, I used to hear it on the radio. Living for the City was a very uh, uh, risky type of song to put out, all about racism. If you listen to it, it's pretty obvious. Do you know? Here's an interesting fact about Stevie Wonder. Pardon me if I already told it. When he was young, he signed a contract that his manager would get 10% of his money. And not only that, if either his lawyer or his manager, might have been his lawyer, once his lawyer dies, his kids get the same 10% of his money forever. Like until, for God knows how many years, 150, I don't know. So Stevie Wonder is suing to break that deal because the lawyer, whatever, did whatever he had to do. Then he passes away, and the lawyer's kids get the money. It's kind of ridiculous. Number 23, John Lennon, Plastic Ono Band. I wonder if this is the one. No, I don't think this is the one with Phil Spector working on. He did one album with Imagine, was the one with Phil Spector. This was 1970. Trying to think. Mother was on this. Working Class Hero. You know, he managed to be the guy out there on the edge, super edgy guy, but living in the Dakota with security, and well, he needed the security as it turns out. But he made a lot of money. His wife is taking over. Number 22. Should I say? I'd say Paul McCartney, but you know what? I don't see Paul McCartney high in this list. So let's go with George Harrison. Robert Johnson, a blues guy. Okay, this is super bluesy guy. We all know the stories about him. He influenced everybody. All of these huge acts like the Stones, Clapton, consider this guy some kind of great influence. So obviously, the Rolling Stone magazine agrees with them. But I don't know enough about Robert Johnson to talk much about him. Number 21, the last one for the week of Eddie G's Music World for April 29th. Chuck Berry, The Great 28. So this is the greatest hits. I do remember seeing, sadly, on YouTube, one of his last performances live. And let me tell you, he was probably in his early 90s. He should have packed it in before, but he had a reputation for being into the money big time. I mean, he would demand being paid in cash after a show or before the show. For every show he did, there'd be no paperwork. There'd just be the briefcase with the money. So he worked until the last breath, pretty much, and he packed it in. So I'm not going to look at 20-1. I am just going to say that I'll be back, and we will catch up later on with everybody. And Eddie G's Music World is done for another week. Let me make sure that I take care of the electric stuff properly. Thank you very much, and I appreciate it very much for you tuning in. Bye-bye.